Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and this week I'm joined by Chris McCormack. Macca, how you going, mate? Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Tim. You don't invite me back anymore as much as you used to. I thought it might be me.
No, I was going to say the complaints were
Yeah.
too great, and no, it's good to have you on, mate. I think the last time we got you on the regular pod was to talk. We were just talking post Kona. We're talking about the changes that happened in Kona, but it's been a while since then, mate. How are things? What have you been up to? I know you're preparing for a marathon.
I'm running in I think it's 3 weeks time, London Marathon. Am I ready? Absolutely not, but that makes it a little bit more exciting. I know I'll get through the event. I'm running with a group of friends. It was sort of a COVID carry on from COVID. We'd entered it when I was ready, but I'll tell you what, I have enjoyed coming back and doing the training. I've realized more and more, you get stuck when you retire, you get stuck in work and trying to do things and being hyper busy since, for the last few years. And but setting a goal and knowing that goal's on the horizon and it keeps approaching, it holds you accountable, right? So I'm actually loving the fact that I feel fit again. I've lost a ton of weight, which is always nice. My missus is happy about that. I'm looking forward to the whole experience. London's been an event I watched for the first time in 1989, which is was live on TV in Australia, because the great Steve Monaghetti, an Australian marathon runner, had a sprint finish with Douglas Wakahuri and Ahmed Sala, and I sat up all night watching it. And I remember saying to my dad, one day I'm going to run that. Well, that day is 2023, April 23rd. So I'm really pumped about it.
Yeah, you've done how many standalone marathons have you done before? Is this I know you did New York. You did New York a few years ago.
New York twice. I've done Boston once, and I started the Sydney Marathon but didn't finish. So this will be number 5 on paper, hopefully number 4 to finish.
Ever done one properly fit? Did you ever do a proper straight marathon?
Yeah, I wanted to. The first New York I did, I tried to break 220. I thought unfortunately I went to 223. I blew to pieces. I was on 215 pace. And lost 8 minutes in the last 7K. So I still have vivid memories of that. I sailed through 32K going, oh man, I'm going to hit 215, you beauty. And the lights went out. I don't remember much of the last 7. But that's the beautiful thing about marathon running. I don't think I've ever properly, I was still a triathlete then, so I don't think I've ever properly prepared for one. But the marathon for me was always the event that, growing up in Australia, we had Robert Di Castello, the world champion, 1983, and one I looked up to immensely. And I grew up watching marathons and just thought it was the coolest, prior to triathlon, the coolest sport in the world. So I have a lot of respect for it. And, now I'm just running it I'll be 50, right? I'm 50 next week.
Yeah, I was going to say it's your 50th on Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah, 50.
Bloody hell.
April 4th. So I'm fine. I'm in the 50 to 55 age group. And, so I'm finally going to run London as a 50-year-old.
Speaking about running, I don't know how much you've been following this, but there's been the New Zealand marathon runner Zane Robinson who got busted for EPO last week. Have you seen anything about this?
Oh no, I haven't. No.
Okay.
I knew Bowl, the great Australian
800 meter,
800 meter runner, but they showed it was a problem with the testing.
Yeah.
Him. So mate, if I was him, I'd lawyer up, because they went after him hard, but I haven't seen the Kiwi one at all. No.
Yeah, well, basically he got pinged for EPO, and then he tried to claim that he tried to get a COVID injection and they accidentally treated him for COVID, which included EPO, and then Clean Sport New Zealand just instantly disproved it, so he got an 8-year ban instead of a 4-year ban. But there's just been a lot of discussion the last week, and I think I listened to an interview he did with Brad Beer on the Physical Performance podcast, and I mean, I never, again, maybe this is my ignorance, but I never realized that doping was such a big thing in running. It's from what I'm sort of.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Mate, even the Kenyans, there's a lot of.
Kenyans are bad, I've heard. They're really bad.
Kenyans on the border of being almost like Russia, being banned from running.
I've heard this.
Yeah, there's a lot of, without question, mate. If you look at the marathons, and this will probably be controversial, but I'll say it anyway. In the late 80s, so there was the Italians came along, where there was Celindo Bordin, and Celindo ended up winning the 88 Olympics. In 87, the Rome World Championships, he was 3rd. But that was when Ferrari and those guys came along with the blood doping. So a lot of that testing cycling was always heavy, but a lot of it came through Italy, and they were great runners and marathon runners at the time, and it came off of World Championships. So Ferrari came through that, testing all those athletes and working with them in blood sport, and then moved it into cycling, and it went from there. But running has always been at the epicenter of it. And you've got nations like in Kenya, where you get a lot of managers and agents to go across, find some talent, dope them up, bring them to, there's no testing over there because they live in a village in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And they don't have passports. And so how do you test them out of, so dope them over there. and then bring them in when they're clean, and then race them. And if they get caught, there's a million more. It's a dirty sport, and they per se, well, it's not all dirty, but it's a dirty sport. But I do believe, and maybe I'm naive, and I'm way more on the outside now than on the inside, that sports science has really closed the gap on. I know doping is still a shortcut, always been the shortcut, but the amount of real-time data you can get now from sports science, and a lot of the testing that can be done has really closed that gap. And a lot of the technology that's come in has been able to allow cleaner athletes to be a lot more dominant than that was in my era, when we used to see dirty athletes sucked one week and then they disappear to the Slovakian mountains for a while and come back and then run a 28-minute 10K off the bike. You're like, you're 80 kilos, mate. Like, where'd that come from? You suck.
The thing I guess always makes me a little bit nervous though, is because you talked a lot about the improvements in sports science, and it's always like, I almost give it like a bit like a Cold War and arms race, where all the sports science is improving to capture the information, but then I wonder if the sports science on the doping side is increasing.
Probably has
at a commensurate rate. So it's probably like just.
Look, I'm with what the sports science has done is made cyborgs out of a lot of the athletes, right? That it's lost that spontaneity, and that I find a lot of the racing predictable and boring, and because it's just all number driven. There's no spontaneity of an athlete anymore. There's no Marco Pantani ripping. Okay, he was loaded to the eyeballs, but you have none of that. Lance Armstrong attacks those. Yes, that era was. That era of racing where you still had a racing IQ and you used it. That's just gone nowadays. It's just follow the numbers, follow the information from the coach, follow it's just quite flat. And that's why I think athletes that have a little bit more of that spontaneity, and I'm a mad cycling fan, like, take Vanderpool and these sort of guys that do attack and do put the numbers aside at a certain point. They're coming from that cyclocross where it's a lot more difficult. They move the needle in cycling. It's awesome to watch race, because they just slide those numbers to the side and go back to old school racing, which is IQ, attack, rip their legs off when they're least expecting it, and then hang on. That's what's inspiring.
And let's apply this then to triathlon a little bit, because I feel like, for me, I've become a big fan of short course racing, but I went through a real phase of watching a lot of the Brownlee, the highlights. And I feel like short course racing in particular has become a lot like that, where we've really missed those, like, again, the people that actually aren't just following the numbers, but really are making a proper race of it. And there's tactics and dynamics. And I mean, that Abu Dhabi short course race where the pack was like, actually 50 athletes or whatever. It's just, yeah, you're right. Like, where are those people that are, throwing the numbers aside and going, let's just fucking rip the legs off everybody and sort of see what happens.
They sort of dive at Alistair and Javier and Jan, right?
Yeah.
Last generation of look, that's actually a bit unfair. I think Christian Blumenfeld, to some degree, even though he is very techie, he races with a lot of courage, and
he's the most like it, I think.
Yeah. So, but there is a lot of defensive racing now. It's, you can win a game. Anyone who likes football, you can win a game of football playing defense. It's just boring to watch, right? Like, everyone loves an offensive player. Everyone loves aggressive and off the front racing and throwing caution to the wind, because it brings drama. Sport is a metaphor for life. It's supposed to be a little bit dramatic, and there's supposed to be ups and downs, but when it's just consistent, and that's what sports science does to some degree, and we're being very stereotypical here, but it just brings a consistent style of racing, and they just run off numbers. I really noticed it, and it's not when I watched Kona with Gustav Iden, and anyone who goes back and watches that race, you look how much he watches that Garmin of his on that run. Every 200 meters, he's checking that pace, boom, Garmin, go. And people are like, what's the difference between, say, the earlier days of racing and the racing of now? Is we didn't know our pace. We could check our marathon pace every mile. Like, I had a Timex watch. There was no heart rate monitor, or it wasn't telling me my exact run pace at the exact real time.
Body temperature, yeah.
I went click, and I would check the mile markers and go, okay, I'm running a 5:40 mile. Adjust pace. So nowadays they're adjusting in real time. Nowadays, with my day, it took you a mile to realize, oh shit, too quick. Adjust pace, right?
And there'd be consequences
for that action. And the old athlete briefings, the common question of most athletes was, are the mile markers accurate? Because you only had a stopwatch, right? So you had to pace of the stopwatch. But you go back and watch him on that marathon, him and Christian. They don't get their eyes off that watch. They take 50 steps, watch 50 steps, and they're adjusting their pace. And that enables you to go a hell of a lot quicker, without question. You know, there's a lot of technology in that, bike technology, shoe technology, and everything is a part of that. But more, it's that ability to make real-time adjustments, and that's what's those that super sapiens they wear. Where back in the day, our day, it was very much, should I have a gel? I'll take 3 an hour. And now it's, mate, blood sugar's low, eat. Like everything's in real time. So you do create these cyborgs, which is exciting. But what I'd love to see is more cyborgs up front, forcing the action and making people not listen to that data, because that makes for dramatic racing.
It's funny because I was watching the new Plymouth World Cup race on the weekend, and I actually did know, because short course guys don't tend to watch the watch so much. They just sort of, you know, go at it. But I did notice it coming out transition, one of the like probably bottom 5 literally pushed the Garmin as he came out of T2. I thought that's not, you don't normally see that in a short.
You should be chasing those 100 bikes in front of you.
I'd be more worried about the people who are 2 minutes up the road than what your pace is on this run. I did find that funny, and I think it's, again, just one of my own examples of like over relying on the technology, because I know I'm very guilty of watching a watch when I'm, you know, on the run league.
I understand it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. That technology wasn't around. So if it was, I probably would have done the same thing. It would have been very, very handy. It's why it was invented.
Yeah.
But it has changed.
Oh, definitely.
Consequences. It's changed the way even amateurs race, even someone like yourself races. I remember vividly saying, and I got crucified for it, when SRMs came out, power meters, right? They came out, and some of the Germans were the first to use it, but they never used it in a race. They used it for training because they were very, very heavy back in the day. And then Craig Alexander was the first to use it racing. From my memory, the first of the front guys that could win the race. And he was working at the time with Chris Carmichael, who was Lance Armstrong's coach, or wasn't really, but worked with Lance. And so he used to dial his power in and just ride those numbers, which is how I won the 2010 Kona. And then when you go back and watch that, I said, mate, this guy will ride those numbers. He won't change. Let's just attack him, right? Let's hit him and he's going to sit there, look at his heart rate, look at his power meter. That number's going to go outside that zone. He's been instructed to don't let the power stay outside that zone for a certain amount of time. Just keep the hammer on. He'll let the gap go, and that'll be the biggest mistake of his race. And that's what happened. And we ended up buying that thing out, and that's what won him. He changed that the following year and went on to win it again and refine those numbers and get. But it was the beginning of what we're seeing now. And then you got guys like Jan Frodeno, who I still think is the master racing IQ athlete, alongside using data. And then the evolution has become the Norwegians. But it was just this. It's funny from my perspective to see that whole evolution happen across short course and and it's just a sign of the times. It's not better or worse. I just wish there was a little bit more spontaneity, just from an entertainment point of view.
Well, the technology is good until it doesn't work, because I was doing a 70.3. I think it was 2017, probably, so 5 years ago. And I remember I was probably 2 or 3K into the run, and I was watching my Garmin, and I was getting the K splits, and every single one of them was like 5 minutes per kilometer. I'm thinking, fucking hell, like, am I that? I don't feel like I'm running slow. I better, like, I normally run about 4 minutes, 3:55, 4 minutes off the bike. So I'm like, fuck, I better pick up the pace. So I'm like absolutely killing myself, and every kilometer it's like 5:05. I'm like, what the hell? What is happening? Like, am I really this fatigued that I don't know what's going on? And it turns out that there was an issue with the satellite. So I was getting a misread on my sensor. So I was actually running closer to 330 kilometers for like the first, which for me is so much faster than I should ever be trying to run ever. And I completely blew to pieces in the back end. I was almost walking because I went out so hard trying to, again, rely on the data too much. And I should have probably felt, I think at this point, at least, I know my body pretty well, but it's like, yeah, it does sometimes come back to bite you in the ass a little bit.
Ironically, I was doing this marathon build. I don't own any watches or anything that I'm still so, and maybe I'm just a dinosaur, but I'm still so, I just have a stopwatch and run off time. Like, I don't need to know how fast I run. In fact, I a lot of the time when I did get one of those Apple watches and I was running a while back, I realized a lot of the long runs I used to do as an athlete was shorter than what I actually thought they were. Like, there's a long run I do here in Sydney, and I've always banked it as 33 kilometers because that's what the old runners when I was growing up said it was. Yep. But I ran it like a few years ago with with an Apple Watch, and it's actually 30.7 kilometers. So a lot of my training diaries, because I was still old school, my run volumes were out. And I often wonder, would that extra mileage have created injuries for me because I was very injury free? Would I have been a mental milkshake had I known that the time I was running versus the distance wasn't as quick as I thought it was, because I was like, mate, I just ran 33 kilometers undulation in the forest at 350 per K pace. Long one felt great, but I wasn't. I was really running 4 because the distance was shorter.
Yeah.
Like, would that have had a negative effect on me? Maybe it could have been positive, negative, but I still now go for a run. Like last night, I don't even know how far I ran, but I run around the loops loops here. I don't even take a watch. I just listen to music and just take it all in. I think we lose a lot of that freedom of, we're so obsessed with the numbers. I get it. It's a numbers generation, and you got to upload it on Strava, and you got to put it on your Facebook, and you got to put it on your Instagram. Well, I get that. I'm not that type of person, but I understand that it's a generation that's grown up like that. I think we miss a lot of the cool stuff that comes with just getting out there and being a part of it all and running. I love escaping all work and escaping everything with a run. I don't need to fill it with numbers and how fast am I running through the national park. I just love hearing the birds go and being left alone.
I've found it really interesting for myself, not necessarily so much with running, but I've really noticed in the last year that I've gotten a real sense of myself in the pool. Like I can swim, because I mean, I know you can get live data with things like those goggles and stuff now, but I've found that I'm very in tune with how fast I'm swimming for the first time. And I've been doing this sport for over a decade now, and I can be swimming. I'm like, yeah, I'm swimming about, 118 pace, and 118. I'm like, yeah, I'm very, I don't know how it happened, but I have become very in tune with my own body in the pool particularly. And yeah, I quite like that freedom a little bit. Like I'm not such a slave always to I don't have to, what did I do? It's like, oh, I know I did that 120. Yeah. So to the point where I don't always check. So say I'm doing a set of hard hundreds, like, 10 100s hard or something. I don't need to check every 100 to make sure I'm on pace. I can tell. Yeah, and I quite like it. It's quite freeing. So
that ability to dial into your perceived exertion and know what you are doing, I think that to me was always the aim of training, is trying to understand through trial and error, through doing more and more training, exactly where I was. What does 3 minutes feel like? And exactly, I could go to the track and without a watch and literally nail you a 3 minute K, on the track without give or take 1 second.
Yeah.
There was no garments, but I just knew the feel of that, and I knew what a 250 felt like, and I knew what a 240 felt like, and you could almost dial that in. I that was always when I realized I was getting super fit, was just how close I could get to that perceived exertion and real-time pace without a number. And I think I've talked about it a lot on this podcast years ago with my old sports psychologist, Susan Kraftner. She showed me a study that the Germans did around with all this pacing and Garmin's coming out, and asked people an old school group of runners to run what they believed was an hour and without a watch, and those ones that were old school could almost run to within, the standard deviation was like relatively 3 minutes. That's about an hour, and they'd stop. Where the people that were used to running with a Garmin, they were running 40 minutes and thinking that was an hour when they took that watch off. So they'd lost that connectivity to time and free flow and perceived exertion. And I think that doesn't have consequences, but I think you're missing a real important part of why you do it, of that freedom that exercise and endurance sport is supposed to give you mentally and physically.
See, I'm very guilty. I'm probably the most boring triathlete on the planet, because we're all pretty, but I do the same, like all of my runs I do on the same loop, and all of my bike rides I do on the same loop. It's how far I go and things like that. And I love that with my run, in particular my run now, I know exactly how I'm running based on where I am at points. Like I'm like, okay, 20 minutes, if I'm running well, I'm here. If I'm running poorly today, I'm here. And I've got the watch, but I don't rely on it so much, just because I literally know every crack, every stone on that run that I do. I know it like the back of my hand. And there is also something really funny about that, because
that's cool.
My wife does her runs, and she'll always go, I'm running about this time. Like, okay, so you'll turn around at this point. She's like, God, you're such a nerd. I'm like, yeah, I'm like really bad, because I know this thing so badly.
That used to be that's how we used to trial things. Like I used to do the same TT loops because we didn't have a lot of the data. I used to do stuff out here in Kurnell, which is in southern Sydney and Cronulla, and Craig Alexander was here, McKillie Jones, Greg Walsh, myself.
Still see him out there, actually.
That loop here, and I know how far it was. Exactly, it's changed a little bit now with roadworks and stuff, but I used to do the same. I used to just go off my Timex watch again, and I knew out and back if I was TTing well, I should be here at this point, right? Yep. And if I was TTing ahead of time, and same with runs, I used to do the same runs. So we use certain courses to test as tests now you've got it in real time. I'm not saying one's better than the other. Don't say, hey, drop all your stuff and do it. But it's a very different, interesting time. And I think there's a trade-off of what you get. I would love to have had more data because, geez, I had some serious blow-ups in Kona that I would love to have had feedback. I probably have 7 titles, right? Didn't have it because I was the idiot that went off the front and went through caution to the wind way too much until I played a little bit more defensive in my Kona attacks. That's when I started getting the results. I think I was too offensive in my racing. I was offensive anyway, but I mean, played that in my racing. That's what I was more like that than anything else.
I still think one of the things you said to me when, like, through doing this podcast, it's really stuck to me over the years, where you always said, if you could go back in time and tell yourself, you literally need to win by 1 second. Like it's first across the line. It's not win by 20 minutes. It's not win by, if you can just win by 1 second and you still win, that's what matters. I that really stuck with me. It's like a very different approach to, you said, just trying to go off the front and fucking destroy everybody.
I wasted 3 years in Kona trying to be a dickhead, right? Like trying to be, man. Now you're older and you look at it. Well, I wanted to be the guys that I looked up to when I was young were like Thomas Hellriegel and Jürgen Zach, and they were big attack, aggressive bikers. Jürgen never won Kona. Thomas won it once, right? And Mark Allen was my idol, but he was just a runner, and he was the one I wanted to be like. But I wanted to be cool like the Germans, right?
Yeah.
When I first went to Kona, I had a 13-minute lead, man. Like off the bike, boom, our first Kona, 13 minutes in front. How do you lose that?
Yeah.
Well, I did, right?
Like getting a 13-minute lead on the bike.
I just wanted, and it was just sheer, different times, right? It's you look at it now, it's a first-time age grouper going to Kona would have known more about nutrition and that than I did. It's just a sign of the times, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was fun.
Well, look, let's talk about some things that are coming up, some things that have happened, because one of the big marquee races of the year, I guess the real, not that it's a season opener, but probably the big event that everybody's been looking forward to this year is happening this weekend, Oceanside 70.3 over in America. It's copped a few losses the last week or two. We've had a few people that are sort of withdrawn, but Oceanside, have you ever done Oceanside? Like, tell us a little bit about the event.
I watched that race evolve. I used to do the Olympic distance race there. There used to be an Ironman there. I think Tim DeBoom and Tony DeBoom won it. Craig Walton got third. I've never done the half there, but have I? Maybe I have. I think, yes, I have. I have done the half there. Yeah, I did. Yes, I have done it. Yes, I have.
Made a real impact on you.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, years and years ago. But I think was it an Ironman? I can't remember. But yeah, I do. I used to train. Well, I lived in San Diego, so I used to train for the military base there. I know the course really, really well. It was basically 90% of the riding you do when you're in San Diego, you ride through the military base. So it's a difficult course because you take the right hander out over the bumps, and it's highly exposed. But it's probably my favorite opening race of the year. It has become that season opener because I think the Frodenos and the Lionel Sanders and those sort of athletes that have come and used that opening race have made it very, very interesting to watch. I'm keen on it. I saw Jan's out, which was sad because I've been following his progress, and I thought he was in great form. And he's not injured, which is a great thing. He's just sick, and that PTO event in Ibiza. But last year, who won last year? That was
Jackson Laundry.
Laundry won. Didn't Ali fall apart on the belt?
Yeah, Ali fell apart big time on the run. I think he didn't. Yeah. Because I know that we had that sprint finish for second and third between Rudy Von Berg and Lionel Sanders. Right. Yes, I love that the biggest takeaway from that event is the second and third sprint, rather than this kid who's just had his breakout career win, and everyone's like, let's look at this over and over again.
But Leo Bergier going this year?
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because I put up a tweet this week about it, and I'm very guilty of, as soon as I heard Jan was out, I was like, like my interest dropped a lot in this event, because I think we haven't seen it. We saw Jan do that Challenge Roth swim bike last year. We haven't really seen him back to his best since probably, like 20, I guess 20. I mean, that he did that Clash Miami, but nothing that we're sort of used to. And again, we've also always thought,
please.
Yeah. But I think my assumption has sort of been a bit with Jan is we weren't going to see him do this middle distance stuff so much. I think personally, I was expecting him to see him sort of commit to just the Ironmans really for the last year's career. So when he announced his season that had the PTO events, that had Oceanside, so I was like, fuck, and I'm super keen to see where he's at. So the announcement that he was like sick. It was like this with South Africa with Ali a few weeks ago. Same thing, where I'm so excited to see these, mega stars of the sport, and then at the 11th hour have them pull out. You can't help but feel a little bit deflated. But Leo Berger racing, like I'm very keen to see how that, because I know he's done a few of these before, but
he lives down in on the French, on the town just around the corner from Caen, because I rode when I was in Caen last year. I went and had a coffee with him. Lovely guy, great bike rider, but that terrain of southern France is much more skill set based. It's very hilly, and he's such a beautiful bike handler, which is why I think he handles that ITU or not World Triathlon racing a lot better. I'm keen to see him because I think he's such a balanced athlete. I just don't know how he's going to time trial, and there is definitely a progression. We've seen it with Johnny Brownlee. They're great bike handlers. How do they progress across to TTing? It's a completely different game, and you bring in, Ben Canute's going to be there. Ben Canute can ride a bike, man.
He can swim, bike, and run. He can.
Like, her kid is strong as
Sam Long, very strong on a bike. Yeah.
But what Leo will be is he'll be able to tag or be very, very close to the Ben Canutes and that, and benefit from that front. Sam Long and that have to come from the back end. But what Leo, as we've seen in a lot of when these World Triathlon kids come across, that 21K distance is a distance they can migrate up to, and they've got a lot of leg speed at. Vincent Louis done it. I think he'd be hard to beat, but there's a whole bunch. Who else is racing? When I was the same. I saw Jan out. I thought it was a foregone conclusion. I know the Norwegians are all in on the Olympics, so we're not going to see a lot of them except PTO racing, which is a little bit closer to that.
I think it speaks volumes of the sport, and I'm not trying to be overly critical here, but I think there's 74 men on the start list, and when I went through the list of like the people to watch, I wrote 4 names down. Like it's sort of the names that I thought were interesting: Ben Canute, Sam Long, Leo Berger. And the one that I'm also quite interested in is Jason West. Now, I'm not sure how much you've been following what Jason West has done this year.
He went really well in that Daytona race.
Yeah,
good runner.
It was Clash Miami, I think.
Miami, yeah. One of the guys.
He ran like 3:10 pace for 16 kilometers, like something
that run. I remember
fucking ridiculous.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
So I'm really keen to see, because I sort of think we're starting to get to the point this year where I think, with the money the PTO has and the fact that they are that sort of middle distance between 70.3 and Olympic, there's certain types of athletes I think are going to do very, very well at that. I don't even know what you want to call it, PTO distance, that's sort of slightly shorter than a 70.3. He's one of them. I actually think Jason West is going to be, like, the Norwegians might struggle out. Like, that's fucking proper running, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how he goes at this distance when you consider some of the, like Leo Berger is no slouch. Sam Long, shit swimmer, but very, very good bike runner. And then Ben Canute, who's just, again, one of the most well-balanced, versatile athletes that's done the sport. But for the men, they're the sort of the ones for me to watch. Again, Frodo and even Lionel being out. Like, it was quite... again, we should give Jackson Laundrie love. He never gets it.
Yeah. You forget him.
Defending champion. Again, breakthrough race for him last year. He also, like, again, the cards are all there for him to go there and repeat his result from last year with, I don't think he probably would have beaten Jan. I know that Sean Green disagreed with me, but there's still a race to enjoy here. It's just, for me, not quite as...
I think we're missing Jan because everyone wants to see where he's at.
Yeah.
Is the Jan of 2019 still the Jan of 2023? Like, is there a drop-off? Because we're all anxiously anticipating potential 70.3 showdown in Finland with the Norwegians and Jan if he goes, and we want to see Jan in Nice, whether we can get that last long course. Because we know what Jan is or was, and I still believe he is. Like, I've never seen a guy who's as committed to training. I was just in South Africa and we caught up with the Specialized guy, Bobby Behan. Big shout out to Bobby if you listen to our stuff. Bobby used to be my head marketing guy at Specialized, and he's very close friends with Jan. He's known Jan, watched Jan grow up in South Africa, and he'd just been speaking to Emma Frodeno, and even she said, I just do not know where my husband gets his motivation from. He is an animal. Like, when your wife's saying that, and I saw it when we've been on training. Well, we go the Breitling stuff together. Like, Jan is always doing something to improve himself. Yeah. He's never sitting down. But even if he has a glass of wine, he's rotating his ankles. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing. Every single second of, he's like Bruce Lee. Every single second of every single day, there is a thought around, how do I make myself better? And that that is why he has the longevity he has. That's why he has the resume he has. That's why he has the success he has. And that's what we're all hoping to see. And I would want nothing more, to be quite honest with you, than Jan Frodeno to dominate this season.
Same.
And to absolutely dominate it. And because there's been a lot of people in triathlon have a short memory where we're gone.
I know they do.
We've gone Norwegian crazy, and we should, because they're remarkable. Christian and Gustav have done remarkable things. And I just think, I think what we are seeing is when you take Jan and the Norwegians out, there's a lot, it deflates a lot. So there's a big opportunity for another group of athletes to put their hand up and go, hey, look at me, right? Like, I'm no muppet either. And whilst I haven't won Olympics and all this stuff, I shouldn't be overlooked. And Jackson Laundry is one of those athletes. And I think, as you said, West is one of those athletes. Ben Canute is always right there, mate.
Third place is 70.3 worlds. Second place, right? Second place.
Twice, right? He nearly beat Javier that year
in
Chattanooga. And like, he crosses over Super League all the way to long course racing. Like,
doing Ironman now, did sub-8 in Arizona, I think. So
like, Ben is an athlete that is he's so humble and nice and it's just always there, but is often overlooked. And I really hope they do a real number on this weekend's racing, and Leo Bergier and Vincent Louis, not that Vincent's racing, but I really do. And because we need the next wave to come up, and we've seen that we all got excited about Christian and Gustav, as we should, because they've dominated everything. But 3 years ago, we laughed at it on this podcast when we brought their names up. You're an idiot, you're stupid, right? So what you do realize in triathlon is we tend to pivot our attention very, very easily, and there's a big opportunity for those athletes to put their hands up and do just that.
I saw a tweet last night. And I know, Sebastian, you listen, and I'm sorry to throw you under the bus, but we were talking about Jan. He said, he's the PR goat. And I said, no, he's the GOAT. And he's like, well, I don't know that. I've not seen him race. And I'm like, mate, I'm sorry, but I completely disagree here. Like, being the greatest isn't about who's won recently. It's about, like, it's not fame. It's not relevance. It's not popularity.
It's Sebi Kinley.
No, this was just a guy who listens to the podcast.
Oh, Sebastian.
But just somebody saying it, and I was just like, no, I'm sorry. Like, triathlon has such a short memory, and like I said, just Google his results, man, and like that tells you everything you need to know.
Look, Jan, look, I believe he's the greatest to do the sport. There's arguable around other athletes like Mark Allen, and people go, there was no one racing that. Mate, I beg to differ.
Jan's the greatest, mate. I'll die on this hill. I'll happily die on this hill.
Had the Olympics been around, Mark could have 4 Olympic titles.
Yeah.
So if you had those Olympics around, it's like I came in the Olympics, like I was mid through my career when the Olympics came. And you sort of sit there thinking, Mark Allen would have won 88 Olympics, 92 Olympics, 96 Olympics. Well, they have 3 of them, right?
Yeah.
If they were around, right? He won ITU Worlds, he won 2, like, he was the king, right? And people are like, there wasn't anyone racing. Yeah, we did see Javier Gomez go back and do that Super Frog race when the great Bob Babbott, who's a god in my opinion of triathlon. He's done more for this sport.
Yeah, Bob's a legend.
He put on that race where it's a retro race, and you have to bring in the equipment that the guys raced on back in the day. And I think the year he set was 1992. So you had to bring in, the guys were bringing head wheels in and grip shift, and Javier Gomez, and you can probably go back and watch it, got on it, said it was the hardest race he did. He just broke 2 hours for the Olympic distance. He said, man, how? Because there's 6 speeds. Even nowadays, everyone's like, mate, you got more gears on your bike now than thing. They're lightweight. Anything you did back in the old days, you traded off for weight. There was nothing aerodynamic. You had wires and everything. You couldn't 3D print your aero bars. People are like, why did you sit so high? I was looking at videos the other day. I was like, mate, there was no choice.
Yeah.
You didn't
customized cockpits weren't a thing. Yeah.
I said, mate. So when you start training, and the helmets were shit. Running shoes were limited. You only had a small, like, you swam in singlets and speedos. There was no speed suits. Your wetsuit, you could hardly fray your arm over. Like, I mean, it was a completely different time. And you go back and look at it's a sign of the times. It's like, it's always difficult to go across eras, but I will always defend Mark Allen, because that guy was the king, mate. Like, I mean, the king. But Jan Frodeno is the best I've ever seen across this Ironman distance. Alistair Brownlee is the best triathlete I've ever seen. And
I was just thinking, did Jan ever win an ITU title, world title? He came close, didn't he? He came close in 2009.
A lot of those guys got close when Alistair Brownlee was injured.
Yeah.
Alistair Brownlee was injured. people won titles. If Alice Brownlee wasn't injured, it didn't win titles. And that's truth, mate. People are probably going to jump in. It's like, Alistair's a friend, but I was a fan before he was a friend.
Yeah.
Right. So he's, mate, just go back and watch.
Yeah,
Watch, man. For short memories, if you miss that, like that period between 2009, remember Jan won in 2008, that period between 2009 and 2016, what that man did is that's a 7-year period of racing.
What's the one, the race is Hamburg, Munich, the one where Jan bridges the gap up to the group.
That's Madrid.
And then Alice just like,
boom. You've never seen a racing aggression. Triathlon got hit because you had an era before that with Brad Carterfeld and Javier Gomez, and man, people forget how good Javier was. Javier's a 10-time world champion. Like, I mean, one of the greatest to ever do the sport, and we don't even talk about him. Like, it's it's hard because there's so many great athletes and so many distances, and but this kid came along, man. Like, man, like, I get it. We're very.
Well, wasn't he leading the race in 2008, the Olympics as well? He was at the front.
He was 19.
Yeah.
And mate, running and disappointed he didn't win. Couldn't believe it. Like a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah, fucking
man,
so good.
Like the racing, the sheer and intelligent, the racing IQ in the engine was great. Just the body breaks a lot now, and we're just seeing older athletes. But Jan Frodeno's mindset, where he's come from. I'm with you, Tim. We're arguing over. We're splitting hairs.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Jan Frodeno, in my opinion, is probably the greatest. Yeah, one of the greatest to ever. And you could convince me either way, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what we're missing when he pulls out, as you said, of an event like, because he's an entertainer, right? When he pulls out of you think, it's a bit of a deflation, but we do want to see where he's at, and I'm looking forward to Ibiza. That was the first thing. Perfect. See you in May.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And I think we're going to see him race the Norwegians there as well, which is going to be like just that other element of excitement now. It's like, this is the thing we've been waiting for literally 3 years at this point to sort of see. So
distance for them to connect at, because the Norwegians are going to come off short course work, short course speed, and that'll be a very interesting race.
Well, I'm going to touch on that a bit later, but before we do, I want to talk about the women's racing, because while the men's race isn't as good, it's still great. It's still a great race, but I think the women's field is. It's a very interesting race. It's an interesting race because the two athletes that I think I'm most interested in watching here are more traditional iron distance athletes rather than those. Like, I think I said this, there was more middle distance firepower at Hell of the West in country Queensland last weekend than there is actually at this race, because we've got Kat Matthews, who's returning from her crash, Chealsea Sodaro making her first appearance since winning Kona, Holly Lawrence, who, Holly I've always thought is right up there, but has sort of just been not quite as sharp recently. And then Paula Findlay, who I think has the potential to beat. I think on her day, Paula could beat anybody. Like, Paula is such a good middle distance athlete. What do you think about the women's race?
Like Paula Findlay is the most talented female. Her and Ashley Gentle over this distance.
Yeah.
You can flip a corner. Paula, sometimes I feel like she if her head's in it, unbeatable.
That's what I think with Paula.
And I may be getting that wrong. I don't know her, so I'm just an outsider looking in. But her ability at this distance is next level, man.
Yeah, man.
She was a great world triathlon racer back in the day. I think she won a world title going into the Olympics. Very young, she won 3 races in a row. I do recall 3 world series events in a row back in the pre-one.
She was very good at people forget that about her.
She got injured, she broke down, and a lot of stuff, and she's come back. And she's really found herself. I get excited when I see her on a stuff list. And it's the same with Ash Gentle. I think those two are the thing. I tend to agree with you on Holly Lawrence. I think what we've seen from Holly is there's just a lot more strength in the women's racing. I actually get more excited about watching the depth in the women's racing right now than I do on the men's side, because there is so much. They're so close, much closer. They're all closed the gap to Daniela. You've got, when you had Lucy Charles in there, there's so many.
See, I'd probably say, I think that what we see with women's racing is that there's a great group of athletes who the gap is quite close, but I think the drop off from that level to I feel like men's racing is a bit more of a consistent spread, whereas women to me seems very top loaded, and then there's a huge gap to the next, like the second tier. That's how I see women's racing.
You're 100% right, except I don't watch, even in the men's side, I don't care who's coming 10th and 9th.
Yeah, it's true. It's
very,
very true. Yeah.
I'm watching what's happening in that front. I want to see the shake up of the lead in the front 5, because that's the entertainment.
Yeah,
okay,
100%.
Then I get the results and go, okay, he came 11th, and then people go, I got 15th. Who cares, mate? Right? Like, I mean, that's just no, yeah, you're never in.
You're not on the points in an F1 race.
Yeah, so. It's like where the women's racing, I feel that it's forever changing up the front. There's always, the Daniela dominance is gone. Which was very, very flat for me. And I love Danny; she's amazing. But I love the fact that Chealsea Sodaro has come along. I love Kat Matthews has come along, and they've like thrown caution to the wind themselves. Holly, Ashley Gentle's going to move up. Paula Findlay's coming up. You've got Lisa Norden, who's in the mix there. There's a Lucy Charles Bartley. You've still got Annie Haug. Yeah. Like there's so many. So when you put that start list together, there's just this swapping and changing of leads, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, I'm with you. Paula Findlay, if she's on, she's unstoppable. She will rip them to pieces, as she should. But Kat Matthews, she's more of an Ironman athlete. It's great to see her back. I think we're all anticipating where she's at after that crash, because it's the beginning of it all for her. And she seems to be in good spirits. We've signed her as part of the Bahrain Victorious team now, because I just think Kat's racing IQ and racing psyche and her head game and belief that she can win races is strong. It's more the Ironman races.
It's interesting you say that, though, because I know that last week there was a lot of talk around Anne Haug's performance in Lanzarote and this incredible 76-minute run she did off the bike. And I said this on the show, but I said she ran the same thing last year. The only difference was Kat Matthews was so far up the road that she couldn't close the gap because, I feel like Kat, we do think of her as an Iron, but she's still a very fourth at 70.3 worlds, won Lanzarote last year, like dominated Lanzarote over Annie Haug last year. Like I think she.
Well, you see Kat Matthews. I see Kat Matthews as a bit of a Keenlay. She's that type of racer.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
And they're exciting races. Annie Haug is like a Marina Carfrey. Mm. She can be in it.
Or Crowe.
Or Crowe. They got just this dynamic run. So it's just natural instinct, I guess. I know for me, you always barrack for the person up the front. Come on, hang on. Like you don't want them to. Even though it's exciting racing. So I think Annie Haug, with her run is amazing. That's why Lucy Charles is she's
at the front,
popular, right? Because she's, come on, you can do it, Luce. So that's how you naturally feel. I think Kat and Chealsea are that middle ground. Chelsea's got the big run. She's right there on the bike. I just like that whole dynamic. I'm interested to see how Chealsea Sodaro is going to go this year. As you've got the pressure of.
Exactly right.
This champion, but she wasn't a huge prolific winner anyway. Prior to that, she was seconds and thirds and firsts. Like she was a great there. So nothing's changed. That's how she handles that. She's got a great team around her, and I'm sure she will. But how she handles that, and where she puts this on the line of importance, and that will dial back to the Jan Frodeno discussion. Is Jan Frodeno puts every race on the line of importance, and that's why we love him. If he's on the start line, he's winning. And a lot of athletes go, oh, this is my B race, and this is my C race, and this is my, So it's, I'm that's why I like Jan and the Norwegians. If they're racing, they're winning.
See, it's interesting. It's like the Chealsea thing. I'm very curious to see, because we haven't seen her race since that Kona race. And I think if you look at, and I mean, this is a huge generalization to make, but there are the Kona winners that like sometimes I almost think it's detrimental to their further career. Like there are some people who have gone on, and I'm not trying to. Pete Jacobs to me is a perfect example, right? Pete Jacobs won Kona, and it was sort of the start of the end for in a lot of ways. Like I think he went and did it. I remember he did a really good 70.3 at the Sunshine Coast, but after that it was just this downward trend. And like he's just an example. I know there are other people who sort of won the Kona and then sort of fizzled out. Like I guess and I certainly hope it's not the case for Chealsea, but I'm very curious to see how she does go with because it's not just that there is a lot more responsibility, there's a lot more demands on your time.
Yeah.
She
I think Chealsea from viewing it, and I've spoken to Chealsea once in my life, and but just from a viewing perspective, she just seems Kona is a special beast, and this whole movement of the World Championships. Geez, I wish they did that years ago because I would have loved it, right? But whether I believe in it or not, it's a different story. But there's athletes that are just built to race Kona. Tim de Boom was one of them. Craig Alexander was one of them. Like, take them another race, they get their doors blown off, right? Like, I mean, take them another Ironman, flogged because different strengths come into play. Kona is a defensive race because of the elements, and it puts people back in the game that don't suffer those elements as bad. And Chealsea just did that easy. It's a debut race, right? I was watching, my God, man, like you are.
And the sophistication, the maturity to do like the way slow down at the aid stations, take the time to like that composure when you're at the front of a race, knowing that you've got some of you have the best athletes in the world coming for you. That was the thing for me with that Chealsea performance, was the maturity, like straight away, on debut, to actually have the self-assurance and the belief to go, no, I'm going to do what I need to do. I still think that was so impressive.
Yeah, there's no panic in it. You only panic when things are uncomfortable and out of control in your head. Oh, it's hot. Your mind's going to that composure, as you said, is an athlete who is okay. Everyone's physically fit. Everyone's ready. It's just an athlete that does. It seemed to me, from an outsider's perspective, and I wasn't in Chelsea's head, and only she knows this. It was very, very easily executed.
Looked easy, didn't it?
Very
really
easy.
did.
And there's a lot more in the tank, and it doesn't mean you can take that same athlete and you take it to California now. Different course, different conditions, different strengths come into play. She's going to get the doors blown off, and it doesn't correlate because the World Championships this year is back in Kona.
Yep.
We've got 40, 50 years of history on that race, on that course. We know what it does to people. And yeah, the men's race is in Nice, but the women are racing on that island again, and yeah, she just needs to build up and do that again. And she is the animal to beat in Kona.
Another one that's worth mentioning on this Oceanside women's start list is Tamara Jewett, the Canadian with the killer run. She's probably the female version of a Jason West a little bit. I think she's definitely softer at the swim than I guess she's going to be coming from behind. But with her run, she could also. I mean, the problem is that Kat, Chealsea, Paula, and Holly are all pretty fucking good runners too. Yeah. So, but that's another one that I think is like another athlete that's sort of like of interest. But yeah, I think the women's race is definitely.
The good thing with California is you get a wetsuit swim, so that's also a dynamic that can shorten that gap. Like, finally, I've always thought really, really good swimmers can swim really, really good, and this was old school. I think the wetsuit technology now is night and day, but old school days, like in a non-wetsuit swim, like it used to be Craig Walton was the level. You put him, you'd be within a minute of him out of the swim. Put a wetsuit on, you were 2 minutes. So everyone used to think, the wetsuit closed the gap. But the big swimmers are so strong that they could throw their arms over. But now that wetsuit technology is so that Yamamoto rubber, and it's just so pliable and flexible. I do think that wetsuit swim can bring the great swimmers like a Lucy Charles could be off the front a little bit further, but it closes the gap between that middle rung of athletes. So you can stay on that group a little better. You get a better start. You can tap in and you don't lose that back end of the swim. So it brings them into play and brings the runners back closer to the front.
Yeah,
so it's going to give her a chance at running herself into a solid position.
It's going to be good. Like, my interest is very much shifted to the women's race, but I'm looking forward to it. I think Oceanside, like I said, it's the season opener in a lot of ways, and there's plenty of good races to come throughout the rest of the year. Like you said, there's plenty of things to get excited about. Speaking of races, we've had a bunch since last time you were on. World Triathlon Series is back. We saw Abu Dhabi. We had New Plymouth World Cup on the weekend. We saw Hayden absolutely dominate. But one of the things I wanted to get your opinion on a little bit is about we love to talk about the Norwegians on this podcast. And I think after 70.3 Worlds in Kona last year, we saw both Christian and Gustav turn their attention solely back to short course racing. And I think of everybody, the attention is very much on Gustav Iden, to see where Gustav is at. Nobody has gone from being an Ironman world champion going back to win a gold medal at the Olympics, and that's what he's trying to do. We've seen him this year. I know that he had some better results last year, but he was 14th at the European Cup last weekend in Portugal. He was a minute behind the winner. And then in Abu Dhabi at the first WTCS event this year, he was 3.5 minutes back in 52nd place. What do you think we're seeing from Gustav Iden this year? Do you think this is is this concerning? Do you think that we're still far enough out? Like, where do you think the indicators are for him in his pursuit for an Olympic title?
He's doing Super League Arena games this weekend. So if you watch that, he's trying to find that speed back. Look, we group the Norwegians together, Christoph and Gustav, because they've always been together, but they feed off each other, especially in short course racing. If you watch the Tokyo Olympics, Gustav benefited from the workhorse that is Christian Blumenfeld to drag those groups together. Take Christian out of a race. For Gustav, he's exposed a little bit. Short course racing. I think Gustav is the heir apparent to long course racing. If I was him, I'd just stay in long course racing, because you are 70.3 the man at Ironman racing, the man, because it's a different. He doesn't have the leg speed of and I'm being we're splitting hairs again. He's not Christian with leg speed. He can run super fast. And actually, I've heard Christian say that Gustav's actually quicker in training at times than he is. But when you're talking about, you got Alex Yee, you have Bergier, you have Hayden Wild, you have there's mate, the list goes on and on and on and on in that.
And the percentages are so
small. It's a difficult play. Do I think he can win the Olympics? No, but I think he's part of a bigger strategy for Norway as opposed to him being the Olympic champion.
Interesting. That's interesting.
I just think Norway has a group strategy. It's almost like we're a group and we do everything together as a high performance group. They've trained since they were kids in that way, and I just think he brings a lot to Christian from a training perspective, from a racing perspective, and that dynamic is what makes him so successful. So he's not going to stay in the Ironman space. I think he should, but I just don't think that's how they shaped this direction for them. So yeah, I expected that. You look at Gustav's results when Christian isn't in a race. Christian Blumenfeld is a very, very special type of racer. He is very aggressive. He is happy to do his share of work. He's very dialed in on the science. He knows what he's capable of doing, and he doesn't second guess a decision. They're the races you want, especially when you have a weaker swim per se, and Gustav is a weaker swimmer. You need that person that's happy to close that gap with that margin of error. If you don't have that workhorse with you and it's left to you, it has diminishing returns. So, I think they need to bring his speed back, mate. For me to sit here on the sidelines and criticize anything the Norwegians do is a little bit rich because, mate, everything they've done has been next level, and I'm a huge fan of everything they do. But we're on a podcast trying to talk about our own thoughts.
It'd be a very boring podcast if we're just
But yeah, I just think we haven't seen him with Christian, and I think that gap will close when you bring, and Casper and all that group together, because they are stronger together.
We haven't seen Casper in ages.
I think he's had a couple of injuries.
Yeah, I think he had a bike crash at one point as well.
Yeah. And but you bring Martin Van Riel back in.
Yeah.
There's a whole group of these guys who've sat out. A lot of them have transitioned out, Aaron Royal and that, but Martin Van Riel is no muppet either. And
hey, mate, he's
that power. Yeah, you put that firepower up in that front group, and you don't have the group back there. Hayden Wild's always been a saving grace per se, with a weaker swim, with the utmost respect, weaker swim compared to the best swimmers. He's still a great swimmer, but he's always been prepared to close those gaps, and Alex Yee and the Norwegians have benefited from that, right? And you just got to look at the whole racing, and that's where the Vincent Louis and that in the past had that advantage when you had a Martin Van Riel and you had an Aaron Royal and you had the big swimmers up front. They could keep that group away, and the Vasco Velasquez and the Hayden Wilds and that are very aggressive races, and it'd almost be a match off. Take some of that firepower out of that chase group and keep that front end power on, which is what the Brownlees basically did when they came along. They were big swimmers and just said, we're not waiting for the great, mate. I'm going to make the bike so hard that if anyone sits up back there, because that's what happens, it's confusion back in that second group, because most of the people that aren't great swimmers tend to have big runs, big bikes. And when you're on that bike and you at any point start thinking about your run, you're not chasing. So you often see people miss their turn in the group and it gets disorganized. Well, you used to know that the Brownlees and Vincent carried that same sort. The Brownlees they knew that they would swap their turns. They would never stop attacking. They recruited the group. They brought Javier and others into that dynamic and made that whole front group swap turns, and that just blew out, right? And Henry Schumann was a big benefactor of that as well.
Well, it's really interesting. Like, let's go back to the Abu Dhabi a little bit, because I haven't really spoken to you about it since. But I think that was my expectation going into the Abu Dhabi race, was that we've suddenly got the Henrys, we've got the Vincent Louis there, we've got this swim power that we really weren't seeing last year. And I think that's why we saw the season go. And I'm not trying to discredit Hayden and Alex, fucking the best, but I felt like we didn't see that real swim power at the front, and then the group commit to stay. And again, I've been saying this since Tokyo. I don't understand why that group isn't committed to staying away. And maybe it's just a case that they can't. I'm not sure, because I would have thought adding, you're right, the Van Riels, the Vinces, those guys back in would create a bigger gap. And like that Abu Dhabi race, it just came together. And like I said, it was a pack of 50. It was just it was a wet run. Like it was, and you saw Alex just kaboom, I'm out of here. See you later, guys. Like, yeah.
I think, look, the Abu Dhabi course for me is the most shit course ever designed for triathlon, for draft legal triathlon in the world. Like, that's going to be controversial, but it's wide roads, There's nothing about that course that makes it one bit technically difficult for the bike rider to get away or give any advantage. And it's not about giving advantage, about forcing groups to line up, right? Forcing the weak to the back and the strength to the front. You can just sit at the back, spin your legs around because the course is so wide. And this is a problem of World Triathlon, without question, is that they design these courses and their rule book, and we work with them in Super League. And it's just a major frustration of mine. It's all about making courses. You've got to make them safe. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about making courses unsafe, but making courses challenging.
Put hills in them.
Yeah, but creating turns and creating a skill set. But they're a lot of the courses are built for the weaker nations so that we can keep the flags on the poles so that the sport looks truly global. So that's at the detriment. So a skilled athlete like Hayden Wild, he rips through a course like that. It's a freaking Formula One track. Like it doesn't give a perspective on the TV. It's so wide, right? Like everyone can tag Hayden Wild. Put him in a Super League or a technical course, you're shelling people off the back straight away. So Hayden Wild gets to the front with a Christian Blumenfeld. They do the work. They're going to always close the gap to the front group because there's the target. There's no restriction to get in the way. Usually the advantage in a technical course is to the smaller groups, to get away, stay away from crashes. There's none of that. So until World Triathlon has the courage, and they never will, right, to start to look at courses that challenge, like the old day courses, and it's just like anything nowadays, it's just more red tape put around everything. Oh, make it easier. Oh, that's too dangerous. Or that corner's too sharp. I'm like, aren't we talking about pro athletes here? I'm wondering when they build the Tour de France course, so they go, oh, you can't descend that hill because there's too
steep
pushbacks. Like, I mean, pro athlete, deal with it, right? Like, it's sort of.
Well, it's interesting because I thought that they took a step in the right direction last year with that Bergen World Cup event they put on, where that course looked fucking killer. It's gone. It's gone this year. And I'm like, oh my God. Like,
probably too many complaints.
Yeah, hang on a second. The descents were too steep.
Too many turns. I had to actually turn my bike and turn left and right. And that's not what I signed up for. I do everything on Zwift and I don't want to really have any bike skills. But yeah, so I think, look, getting back to Gustav, I think, look, we're splitting hairs. So if anyone's here, how dare you criticize Gustav? I'm his biggest fan. I think, in my personal opinion, this kid can win 6 Konas, right? Like, I mean, he's shown he can win on the Nice course. I'm disappointed for the sport that he's gone back to the Olympics because after seeing that Kona performance and after seeing him win 70.3 worlds on Nice, he's the only one that I think can unleash Frodeno and some of the others on it. He would win Nice. And we're going to come into Nice. It's like sort of disrespectful to the other athletes. And if he does win Nice off the back of short course training, then boo-hoo, all the long course athletes suck. Right? That's basically my opinion, because if you can train for Olympic distance and Olympic campaign and just pop back 1 week before the grand final, 1 week after the grand, then you have the test event in Paris, August.
Yeah, that's August. Yep.
And then you have one other event, then early September is Nice, and then you've got the grand final. I think so. It might be 70.3 worlds a week. I can't remember. But if he comes back off that whole Olympic campaign and wins Nice, mate, all you long course athletes need to get a job, because it's sorry, man. Like it's 100% his talent and he's able to do it, but it's just, yeah, it's sad. I think he's more suited to that longer course distance than he is. And mate, the results show he's 2-time 70.3 world champion and he's the Ironman world champion.
And that performance in Kona was next level. One last thing I want to touch on just quickly before we wrap up this week was the New Plymouth race last weekend, the World Cup event, where we saw 2 things I want to talk about. Gwen Jorgensen making her return as she commences her attempt at an Olympic berth. And then Hayden Wild, who fucking dominated that race, like literally was in a league of his own. Gwen Jorgensen, what do you think the outlook is? How do you think we're tracking? The American team is probably one of the most competitive teams to make. What do you think the outlook is?
I was very keen on seeing Gwen's comeback, right? I think because a lot of the athletes that she left, like the Taylor Spivies and a lot of that female, you got the other Taylor, what's her name? Taylor Nibb. A lot of the females on that US team aren't the females that Gwen left. When they are well and truly evolved as athletes, and you can't the sport evolves by a percentage every year. And when you step about a year, so it's definitely like that was a weak is the wrong word, but that was an average women's field in New Plymouth. I didn't expect her to be any better, but what I did see was she was the third fastest run. She's still trying to find her legs off the bike. She's made the Olympic champion, but it's no foregone conclusion that she's going to make this women's Olympic team. I thought a swim was okay, for a woman who hasn't been racing, but I think there's a lot of catch up to do, and I think there's a lot of that women's racing at that World Triathlon level has 100% tightened up, and there's
evolved. It's no longer down to the run, and
it's almost. There's so many of them. Flora Duffy, Georgia Taylor Brown. They're much different women than who Gwen left in.
And we've got the Beth Pot. Like it's not like Gwen was always this incredible runner, but we've got athletes who are like literally 5K. She had the 5K road. Like these are legitimate runners in their own right.
Absolutely.
Do you think? Because one of my things, I fucking love Gwen Jorgensen. I'm so excited she's coming back. My hope, my great hope is that she finds the love for triathlon again, and whether the Olympics works or not, I'd love to see Gwen start doing some long course stuff. Do you think that's a possibility? Or do you think it's just if this doesn't work, we're gonna see her walk away?
I don't know. She does what her heart does. I was surprised she walked away to chase running. But that was her call. She was always a runner first. And yeah, you're right. Like to come back and really, whether she's coming back for financial reasons or whether it's truly heart driven, I don't know. And that's only Gwen knows that. But if you're coming back for money reasons, it's a tough sport to have a crack at, right? And you're not going to do long course, right? If it's just, look, I want to prolong my career, get paid, win races, you're not going to win the long course races with that wheelhouse. I don't think she has the bike power of the Paula Findlays, the Daniela Reefs, the Lucy Charles. They'll rip it to pieces, right? So I think her expertise is in this, and I think maybe she'd be probably looking for a relay spot.
Yeah,
but. Man,
it'll be hard to get though. I think if you look at
Taylor Spivey is on, man. She has paid her dues.
She absolutely has.
She is on, and I'd go as far as saying she could potentially be the first pick because she believes she's
motivated,
been long enough. She's motivated. She's found her place, I think, within herself and within the racing, and she's confident enough to win. Taylor Nibbett can do anything, right?
Number 2, definitely.
Anything she wants to do, like she just needs to pay attention to it, and she can do it. And you've got like this, you got Summer Rappaport. You've got there's a whole bunch, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, mate.
Who was it? The one that I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name. She won the Montreal Arena Games.
Serena. Chase McQueen's.
Yeah, Chase McQueen's girlfriend. I'm blanking.
Mate, I was talking about her this morning. She's a great runner.
Yeah.
An unbelievable runner. There's so many, but look, never bet against a champion. Gwen Jorgensen has all the artillery to do it.
And she had a baby 5 months ago. Like that's the other thing.
5 months ago, she's brave to come back to the racing. She looked like a runner. So she's got a lot of, I guess, work to do to build the body back to be a true triathlete again. She's definitely lost that triathlete physique that she probably needs to give her the strength to be the old Gwen. But man, the one thing she's built off a big base of running. So when she finds her legs, she can do anything.
Absolutely.
She's a great swimmer, so she can be in there. It's just how far the women's racing has evolved. And when do we start to use Gwen as the benchmark to say, okay, that's what it was. This is where we are, and that's the gap you need to fill. And that's sort of what I saw in. Okay, it's the first race back, but what I saw was like, wow, because that's a second. It wasn't a World Series packed field, and she was out, right? Like she was never in it. First race back.
I think you saw her make that attempt to bridge up to the lead group on the bike, and I think the effort cost her because she then went from being 10, 20 seconds off the lead to suddenly I think she came into like over a minute back. Like you could tell that effort to try to commit.
You had no Jess Learmonth. You had no Flora Duffy. You had no Georgia Taylor Brown. You had Maya Kingma. You had no horsepower in that front group at all that we've seen dominate. Yeah, like you got. We talk about the women. We don't even talk about Zafaris, Katie.
Yeah,
he's back as well, right? Like I mean that US women's team is one of the hardest in the world to make. It's like the British team, and
definitely.
And I think Gwen's back is fantastic. I'm excited to see it. and we've got a lot more improvement to do. But I'm more intrigued about just how big that gap has been since 2016 to 2023. Just how much improvements happen at that front.
Well,
end.
even looking at Nicola with Silva, I still think watching the end of that race where they're literally like walking next to each other saying like, are you going to go? Are you going to go? And Nicola was eighth in Tokyo at the Olympics.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's sort of, I guess, similar-ish. And yeah, I'm
Nicola never walked away from the sport, right?
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly. That's what I mean. So
yeah, there's a lot. But mate, Olympic champion.
Yeah,
fucking sit there and go, I hope she just goes, how do you like them apples? Right.
Yeah. I hope she does so well.
Very capable of doing that.
Yeah, I really, really want to, like I said, I think the sport's better with Gwen Jorgensen in it. She's definitely one of my favorites. So anyway, mate, thank you so much. It's great to get you back on the show. All the usual stuff at the end of the show. Guys, thanks for listening, Macca. Talk to you later.
Cheers.
See you guys.